Hey everyone, Happy New Year. Welcome to the stream. The first day of the new year is almost over. And yet, here I am in front of the microphone, in front of the camera, because my work is not done. In fact, I still need to record the New Year's episode of my podcast, A Break. This is a tradition that I've been doing, I think, for the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken, so it's not that much of a tradition anyway. But it is for me a way to bridge, to build a bridge between the old year and the new year. And there is always a bit of a, I'd like to look back on the cool things of 2023, look forward to the year ahead and the things that I am looking forward to. The problem is always, it's so busy around this time of the year. So I've got Christmas, and then you've got the end of the year stuff. Usually after Christmas, I'm already tired. But this year, I had also just come back from a very intense week in Rome. So I was way too tired to record anything. But on the first day of January, I think that still counts as like New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. I figured I might as well conclude the podcast series of last year, and then for the rest of the week I can start working on the new content. There's something in my mind, maybe it's a little bit over the top, but I promised to do an episode of both of my podcasts every week, so the walk and the break, and it's just the final one of the break that is missing, and so I want to conclude that so I can wrap it and put it away. So, plus, it's always fun to talk about the cool things of the year. So, I'm not going to do much of an intro. I've got a lot of stuff to talk about, plus it's already 8:45 over here in the Netherlands as I'm recording this, so I might as well just give it a go and record this thing.
Do you need a break?
You read my mind.
Come with me.
Hello and Happy New Year! It is a brand new year. I'm recording this on the first day of 2024, and in this episode I'm going to look back on all the cool stuff that we experienced last year, and I'm looking ahead to what's to come, and I'm hoping it's going to be an amazing year. But before I continue, let me first of all thank you so much for all your support, for the time that you invested in watching my live streams, listening to my content, reading my blog posts, following me on all these social media. It is amazing. And I've had so much great feedback, not just remarks or comments on stuff that I do, but also a lot of very good feedback and ideas that helps me to determine where I'm going and what you actually like to watch, listen to, etc. So I've learned a lot from you this past year, and I am so grateful because that gives me a lot of ideas and energy for the year to come. But it is, of course, important to look back on this previous year when it comes to being thankful. I think it's also important to realize that even though we live in a world where there's a lot of darkness, there's a lot of suffering, we worry about a lot of things, and in this past year, a lot of bad stuff has happened in the world. But we should never forget that next to all this darkness, there's also a lot of light, there's a lot of creativity, a lot of kindness, and I always try in these shows to focus on that, because the rest of the media does all it can to focus on the negative stuff. But I believe that ultimately what makes this world a better place is if we always look at what is good, what is beautiful, what gives us joy. Not because we negate what is bad or we don't want to think about it, but as almost like an antidote to all the negativity. That is probably also one of the reasons that you listen to my stuff, because that's what I hope to convey all the time, is to give you positive energy, ideas, and to hopefully also communicate a bit of my enthusiasm about what's wonderful in the world to you, so it gives you power, it gives you strength.
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl and that kid sees dead people and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You know, you need a movie education. You need a movication. I'm gonna give it to you.
2024 is undoubtedly going to be another amazing year for movies and TV shows. We live in a golden era, and even though the streaming wars are definitely having an impact on the whole media landscape, there is still so much that is scheduled for the months to come that I think there's going to be more than enough to enjoy. And before I talk about what I'm looking forward to, I also want to look back on 2023, because that has also been an epic year, especially for me when it comes to television. You know that I love the movies. I love the theatrical experience. However, this last year, I saw almost no movies. I went through the list of all on IMDb with all the movies that came out in 2023, only to realize that I saw almost none of those movies. And I think it is partially because I no longer have my subscription to the local movie theater. Movies have become so expensive. And because I already have a lot of recurring costs per month to pay for all these streaming services, I just had to economize somewhere. And I decided to take out the media component of my monthly cost that was the highest, and that was my local movie theater. I think I pay, 25, 26 euros per month. And then, of course, I can watch any movie, but in reality, I only went maybe once every 2 months to the theater to watch a movie. And I think after COVID, after the pandemic, I never really got back into that habit of going to the movies. Another reason that I didn't feel the need to go to theaters is it's the industry's own fault. A lot of the movies that came out only a few months later were available for free, well, relatively for free, on these streaming networks, especially everything Disney. Just a few months after it was in theaters, these movies I know are going to be on Disney Plus. So why would I pay a lot of money to go and see them in the theater when I can watch them in the comfort of my own home, not disturbed by cell phones going off or teenagers that are just constantly eating and chatting on their phone during the movie? Why don't I just wait a little bit? None of these movies are very time sensitive. I feel, of course, I've not always been part of the online discussion and conversation about these movies, but I also didn't really feel the need. And so there are a number of movies that came out this past year that are currently still on my watch list for 2024. However, I did watch a few movies. I tried to catch up with the Mission Impossible movies with Tom Cruise, and I have to say that what triggered me to watch those was that they were going off the air. So I think they were all on Amazon Prime, and then I saw on the main screen of Amazon Prime that these movies were going to disappear in a time span of 30 days. So I had 30 days to finish watching these movies, which is what I did. And they were very enjoyable, kind of stupid also. Like, they're so improbable, but the action is good. It's not on the level of James Bond. I enjoyed that a lot more, but it's like almost a quintessential popcorn style movie experience. So those were fun. I only saw one superhero movie, and it was none of the movies that came out from the Marvel universe. The only movie that I saw, and I didn't even see it in theaters, I saw it as soon as it came out on HBO Max, was The Flash, with Ezra Miller, very, of course, controversial actor. I didn't really like his role in the Fantastic Beasts saga. So I was worried that this movie would be bad. There was a lot of bad press around the movie. And I have to say, I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was one of the best DC movies that they have done in this current DCU. Now, of course, the whole DCU is going to change because James Gunn has taken over and he's going to start a whole new type of DC movies. The first movie will be about Superman, which I'm super excited about, and I really hope that it reconnects with the Superman that I loved when I was young. And it was not this brooding, like super dark, almost like it could have been a twin brother of Batman, grumpy Superman, but just like the cheerful hero who's going to save the day. To a certain extent, Shazam felt to me much more like the original Superman than the Superman that we got in the DC universe that is now coming to a close. By the way, I heard that Aquaman, the sequel to the first Aquaman movie, also, disappointed at the box office. Doesn't surprise me at all. I was one of the few people who actually really disliked the first Aquaman movie. I saw it twice. And the second time, because the first time I saw it, I thought it was so bad that I started to doubt myself. I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this warrants a review. Maybe I was in a bad mood. And I saw it a second time and I could barely make it to the end. That's how bad it was. And so I had no intention whatsoever to watch this second Aquaman movie. And, well, probably I'm not the only one who is kind of done with this version of the DC universe. Anyway, but The Flash, yes, I liked it and actually thought that Ezra Miller did a tremendously good job. It was funny. I was constantly mesmerized by the way in which they used one actor to play two versions of himself. And then all the cameos and all the stuff. It was just fun. Inconsequential, but very much fun, very much what I like to see in the future of the DC universe. And then I saw one other movie that I remember. I undoubtedly saw some other movies, but I just can't remember them. But there's this one movie that I remember very, very well because I saw it the day before New Year's Eve. It had just come out, and I remember it also because it was the worst science fiction movie I've ever seen. Of course, you know which movie I'm talking about. Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon. Apparently, this was a movie that he pitched to Lucasfilm or to Disney as the plot of a Star Wars movie, and Disney was not interested. And so he decided to change a few things and to turn it into his own intellectual property and to create like a two-part movie that feels in many ways like it is a rehash of a lot of Star Wars stuff, but the execution is so incredibly dreadful that I wouldn't be surprised that this movie will become a hit for Netflix because it's so bad. And it's so unbelievably bad that people want to watch it. Like, is it really that bad? Yes, it's that bad. And in fact, it's much worse than what you think it is. That's how bad it is. It's as if he took just, he made probably a bunch of drawings of some key scenes with lots of special effects. And then he was, okay, I'm going to tell a story around these iconic scenes that I want to display. And he forgot to tell a story. It's just a chain of totally unrelated events. Half of them are in this inexplicable slow motion where, slow motion can be cool, like in The Matrix. It serves a purpose. Here, it's just like you're watching a movie. Okay, so they're fighting, and all of a sudden, everything slows down. And everything ramps up again, and it's back to the normal speed, and then everything slows down again. It's like the entire movie gave me slow motion whiplash. The other thing that I really disliked is that the entire movie is derivative. It's like every scene has a Star Wars equivalent or whatever. There are so many movies that this movie resembles. Now, that's not a bad thing if it's an homage, if it's like, oh, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Here is my version of that. No, it's just like, okay, you know that cantina scene in Star Wars? Okay, I'm going to do like a cheap, bad version of that. Why? No reason. It's just... this is supposed to feel like Star Wars, so it needs a cantina scene. Like, even the cantina scene in The Mandalorian. Was it in The Mandalorian? I think it was in Mandalorian. There's this cantina scene, and it was better than this one. And that's a TV show, a low-budget TV show. It was so bad. Now, the special effects are all over the place. There are a number of scenes that look nice because it's almost like a CGI translation of concept art, so looks okay. But there are also a lot of scenes, especially in the beginning of the movie, where it looks so cheap. And it's clear that they're on a soundstage and they are probably in the volume or some similar technology surrounded by LED screens. And you can tell it looks really low budget. Now, towards the end of the movie, it gets a little bit better. But what good are special effects if the story is non-existent? Really non-existent. Like the female hero of the story is just the total ripoff of Luke Skywalker. Very much the same thing. There's also an empire that exploits people and robs planets of their resources. But the bad guy is just like a Nazi. Like literally, the bad guys look like Nazis. They have the same like hats and everything. And everybody speaks in this very strange accent that resembles nothing except for one guy who, for whatever reason, has like an Irish accent, and there's like, why? Why? It's like the entire movie, and it is a long movie, and it's only part one. There's apparently going to be a part two. Plus, Snyder has already announced that there's going to be an R-rated version. That is the real movie that he wanted to give us. I was like, dude, why didn't you give us that movie? Because you can clearly see that they cut out a lot of the gory stuff. I don't think I'm going to like that R-rated version any better than this one. But seriously, the entire project is so insane. It's almost as if this is part of a strategy. Let's make the worst science fiction movie so everybody is talking about it. You get all these rants and people get curious, so they'll watch it anyway. Is that the strategy? I don't know. It's just stupid. Anyway, let's stop talking about this movie. Don't watch it. It's so bad. However, I am looking forward to a lot of the movies that I missed, and some of these movies are currently in theaters. So here's my random list, not in any particular order, of movies that I want to see in the months to come. First of all, Godzilla -1. I love Godzilla. I even secretly totally love the very bad Matthew Broderick Godzilla. Yes, I know this is probably something I should bring up in confession, but that was my first Godzilla movie, and I fell in love with Godzilla. And I don't know, but apparently Godzilla -1 is the best Godzilla movie ever made because it's not about the monster. It's got a human heart. Every review that I see about this movie makes me want to watch it. Maybe even in movie theaters. Maybe I'll make an exception and go watch this in the theater. Second movie, I haven't watched it yet. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It's now on Disney+. So again, why go to the movie theaters if a couple of months later I can watch it for free? The Creator, by the guy who did Rogue One, looks amazing. I want to see it. Barbie, it's already online, so haven't watched it? Definitely going to see it. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I love the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's the best series in the MCU that we have. Haven't seen it yet. Looking forward to it. The Boy and the Heron. I heard so much, like people were just over the moon about this movie. It is, of course, a new Ghibli movie, Studio Ghibli movie. And I haven't seen a single Ghibli movie that I didn't like or love. Apparently, this is one of the best. The Super Mario Brothers movie. I saw it was also available online, so I haven't watched it yet. I really like the Nintendo universe, so I'll probably watch it. Oh, by the way, another movie that I saw the other day, or rewatched, was Pikachu Detective. And I remember seeing this one when it came out, and I thought it was actually better than I expected. I thought it would be a children's movie, which it kind of is, but it was entertaining. But you may know that I've since then really stepped into the world of the Pokemon, so I play Pokemon Go, and I also play Pokemon Sleep, which really works to get me on a regular sleeping schedule. And so I now know all these Pokemons that are in that movie. It's such a blast. I had so much fun seeing these live action kind of CGI versions of the Pokemon that I know from the games. It is extremely well done. So anyway, Super Mario Brothers, Across the Spider-Verse. Haven't seen it yet. And again, people are raving about it. Dungeons and Dragons. I'm so much into D&D. I just had a final session the other day on the 30th of December, and it was so epic. So we have two groups in the community, in our Patreon community. We gather on Discord, on our Discord server, and we play the same story, but the groups are not in sync. So one group is at a different level of the story. But it's my very first D&D experience, and it is so amazing. I love it so much. It is, I don't know, I disappear into that story. Time stands still. I am hooked for life on D&D. And I hope that in many, many, many years to come, I'll be able to play D&D. In fact, I think that this is a type of game that you can play until a very old age. Video games, maybe at one point I won't be able to do all the quick reactions and whatnot. But D&D, it's all in the theater of your mind, and it's so awesome. So anyway, looking forward to watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie. The Marvels. I loved Miss Marvel as a TV series. I really want to see the Marvels movie. It totally flopped at the box office, but yeah, it's got to be good. Elemental, this Disney, I think it's Disney, or is it Pixar? Anyway, it's the same, probably the same place where the money ends up. Elemental apparently is still doing well at the box office. Definitely want to see it. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Love the first Shazam movie. I want to see this sequel, but just haven't found the time. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantum Mania, also haven't seen it. Well, that's not entirely true. I did try to watch the first 15 minutes, and I got so confused, and it was such an avalanche of CGI. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Maybe some other time. I just don't, not now. So anyway, those are the movies that are currently on my list. If there's any other movie that you feel I need to watch in the months to come or in the weeks to come, you know where to find me. Let me know. Now, as for television, that's a whole different story. I watched a ton of television in this past year, and some of it was the best television I've ever seen. And that's not hyperbole. The all-time favorite television series that I've ever watched, at least the one that impressed me most. I think Lost is probably still at the top, followed by Battlestar Galactica, the remake by Ronald D. Moore. But then Succession. Whoa, I have a hard time describing what that series did to me, but I have been binge watching that series. I couldn't stop watching. It was so incredibly well done. It is one of the finest television series ever made. Not for children, as I've mentioned many times before in my reviews. But Succession, if you haven't seen it, I think it's top-notch. For All Mankind, I am currently still watching that series. I haven't caught up yet, but it is on par with Battlestar Galactica. Also, Ronald D. Moore, who wrote and directed part of this, it is insanely good. You can watch it on Apple TV+. Ahsoka, I thought it was fine. It wasn't definitely not my favorite Star Wars television series, but I loved seeing the rebel heroes in real life. I felt that a lot of the writing, the dialogue, and the direction was kind of stilted, but it's also because we came off the high that was Andor, and Andor was the best Star Wars television series I've ever seen. I would even rank it above a lot of the Star Wars movies. That's how good it was. And so to go back to much more conventional Star Wars storytelling in Ahsoka was a bit difficult, but it was okay. It was okay. For what it is. Wheel of Time. Now, the second season was definitely a lot better than the first season. They still take a lot of shortcuts. If you are a fan of the books, then you're going to be upset because they do so much condensation of the story and they leave out a lot of characters and plot points and they change a lot. But for what it is, I think it's very, very good. It is still amazingly good quality fantasy television. And even though I like the story of the Rings of Power better, the Wheel of Time is still, I am very happy that we get this. And it still makes me want to read the entire series, the book series of Wheel of Time. An unexpected discovery was the series Poker Face, which is kind of a bit of a detective type of story. It's really hard to explain what it is. It's about this woman who is able to see when someone is lying, and it is 100% foolproof, and she uses that gift to solve crimes, and it is really, really well done. And then, of course, this was the year of Star Trek. Oh, my goodness. Even more than Star Wars. This was 2023 will always be remembered as the ultimate year for Star Trek. Of course, we got the final season of Star Trek Picard, which was insanely good. And then it was followed by Strange New Worlds, the second season, which is my all-time favorite Star Trek series. It is so good. I want to live on that Enterprise. I want to be part of the crew. The rest of the world may crumble, but let me live there. It is just insane. Silo, another hit on Apple TV Plus. Very, very cool post-apocalyptic science fiction series. Even better than the book, even though the book is very good, but the TV series takes the whole story and retells it in a way that is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then I watched some animated series. Avatar, The Last Airbender, still watching the original series. Love it. Looking forward to the live action version on Netflix, I think it is. Especially because the One Piece live action series on Netflix was so good. And that gives me a lot of hope for The Last Airbender as well. Speaking of anime, I also really loved a number of anime series that I've discovered, especially Vinland Saga. Vinland Saga is an historical anime about the time of the Vikings in England and their discovery of the United States, and it is a very good story. Also, a surprisingly Catholic story. I can't spoil it, but the Catholic history is extremely important to the story of Vinland Saga. And then humor. This was for me the year that I started watching Friends. I'm a little bit late to the party, but it's fun. But you can tell that it's old. Especially, I started watching it because I'd finished watching The Big Bang Theory this last year. And I miss it so much. I just love these sitcoms, and so Friends. I was like, I'll watch Friends, and it's okay. It's occasionally funny, but it's a bit dated. I also discovered Young Sheldon, which is not a sitcom, but it is definitely a prequel to The Big Bang Theory, and it has a whole lot of charm. And yeah, I love the way they go in a totally different direction when it comes to the format, but a lot of humor is similar. Of course, same writers, same creators. So yeah, love it, love it, love it. So all this, in summary, were my highlights of 2023. TV-wise, what am I looking forward to? Well, there's this new Star Wars series that I'm very curious about, the Skeleton Crew, and the Acolyte. is also intriguing. And then just, the new season of For All Mankind and some of that stuff. So who knows? But I love that we have so much good quality TV. It makes me not even miss the the movie theater.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
All right, now let's talk about books. 2023 was the year in which I read the most books of my life. At least in the time span of 1 year, I set myself the goal to read 150 books. And I made it in the nick of time. Literally on the last day of the year, I read 3 books. And that brought me to a total of 150 books. The thing that made it hard was that I read a couple of very long books. So I read the Mistborn trilogy for the first time, the Red Rising, the first 3 books of Red Rising, and some other, pretty heavy duty stuff. And so I fell behind on my regular rhythm of reading kind of 3 books per week. So I had a bit of a sprint towards the end. However, I'm so happy that I did, because I discovered so many amazing authors. Also read a lot of nonfiction, which has really helped me in many ways. I talk about it also on this week's episode of The Walk. So it was a very good experience. However, for this year, I am contemplating setting myself a goal of only 50 books, but in order to allow myself to read some of those big series, like The Wheel of Time. There's no way that I can try to read 150 books and then at the same time read any of the Wheel of Time books, because every book is about 700 to 1,000 pages. There are also a couple of Brandon Sanderson books that I would like to read. Those are also like between 800 and 1,200 pages. So I think I'm going to do something different. I've gotten into the habit of reading a lot, so now with that acquired habit, I think I can attack some of those bigger books, but I need to reduce the total number of books. So I'll read 50 big books, big series. It's going to be a different type of discipline, because then I need to make sure that every day I read a certain number of pages. Otherwise, I will never get to the end. And to me, it's harder to stop reading at one point than to just finish a book and then move on to the next one. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted. Well, I did make a list for my socials about my favorite books of 2023. So maybe this could be inspiration for your own list for 2024. So here are the books that I liked reading most in 2023. Best drama, the book Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang is a very accomplished writer, and she has a number of bestsellers on her name, but a lot of those books are just very long, and I wanted to read something of her, but I wanted to start with the shortest book, and that was Yellowface. Yellowface tells a story. It's almost autobiographical, definitely inspired by her own experiences as a modern author, and it's about this young woman who is friends with a successful author who dies suddenly, and then she steals the manuscript of the book that she was writing, and she publishes it under her own name, and then she tries to cover it up for the rest of the book. It is an amazing thriller. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it was almost as if life imitated art, because just recently something very similar happened in real life when someone who had a contract with a big publisher for her debut novel was outed to have written a ton of negative reviews on similar books under all sorts of fake accounts. And some people started to suspect that she was behind that, and it was all part of her way to deal with her insecurities about her own book. But when people started accusing her of doing that, she started to fight back and say, no, it really happened. And then she just piled on the lies. And ultimately, just the other day, she confessed that, yes, she was behind all those negative reviews and she has lost her contract. But that was so similar to what happens in Yellowface. Oh, my goodness. I never expected that after reading that book, I would see a live action version of that entire story. Insane. Anyway, best science fiction book. Absolutely, The Red Rising Saga by Pierce Brown. I've reviewed it multiple times here on the show. Go read it. It's super good. Best fantasy, The Mistborn Trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. I do like Pierce Brown's books a bit better because it's more balanced in terms of action. Those books read like movies. In fact, why haven't they been turned into movies yet? Brandon Sanderson is a master in setting up a plot and world building. And he does write action very well, and also magical action, which is kind of always hard to, how do you describe magic? How do you describe like powers that we don't have any reference for? He does it really well. But he also has these long parts of the book where it's all like you're just waiting for something to happen, and it's just all these conversations that just go on and on and on and on, and a lot of politics and not my thing. I'm too much ADHD for some of Brandon Sanderson's writing. So here's hoping that some of the newer works of Brandon Sanderson are somewhat better, more balanced. But all in all, I like the world that he created with Mistborn. It was just, it was not as good as Red Rising. Best biblical study or theology book. Definitely the works by Luke Timothy Johnson. I read several books, which are actually almost like courses. They're audio courses. And the one that I read first and really made a huge impact on me was the book The Apostle Paul, where he talks about what is attributed to Paul, how important the writings of St. Paul have been for the early Christian communities, because Paul was writing his letters long before the Gospels were written down. I never realized it, but the Gospels weren't even around when Paul was already writing down his letters. So it's a fascinating, for me, it was a total like retake of the early church and the composition of the New Testament. I learned so much, and I'm not done learning because I've got a number of other books by Johnson on my to read list. Best history book. This was recommended to me by Liz. She said you have to read Febina by Janina Ramirez. It's a book about the forgotten role of women in history. And the book gives a number of examples of very important female, you could almost say heroes. It's not fiction, of course, but like protagonists of our history that have almost completely been forgotten, even though we are still benefiting from what they did in their time. So amazing book. Best science book. This was also such a revelation. It's called Other Minds, The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness by Peter Godfrey Smith. Really good book about the evolution of the octopi, is that the word, of octopuses? And he explains how the octopus is basically the result of an evolutionary chain that is completely different from ours, but still evolves into this incredible intelligence. But it's so foreign, almost as if this is an extraterrestrial. So if we ever try to conceptualize what extraterrestrial intelligence and creatures from another planet could look like and the way they would function, look at an octopus, because we have it right here in our own oceans. I can never eat octopus for the rest of my life now that I've read this book. Fascinating also from a philosophical point of view. Best autobiography. I love reading Warwick Davis' autobiography, Size Matters Not. He wrote this even before he took on the role of Willow, like in the new series that was then later on quickly canceled by Disney Plus for some stupid reasons. And so, but Warwick Davis is a great guy. And I had the privilege of meeting him once during the first Star Wars celebration. And I've been a fan ever since. He's such a nice and funny guy. And I loved the honesty of this autobiography. And you could tell it's super authentic. He is exactly the person that he writes on paper. There is no persona there. And that's rare in the world of movie making. And then, speaking of movie making, the final book that I really enjoyed reading was about the MCU. It's called MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios, and it's written by 3 authors, Joanna Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, and Gavin Edwards. If you like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and you wonder how these movies got made and what happened behind the scenes, that's the book. It's extremely well written. It reads so well. Which I didn't expect because it's just behind the scenes stuff. But they did a terrific job gathering all this information that actually Disney doesn't really want to get out. And I wrote in my review on Goodreads that I was hoping that someone would write a similar book about the current modern day era of Star Wars production, because we only see the official documentaries where, of course, everything goes well. There are no conflicts. There are no rejected versions of the script. But there is so much going on behind the scenes. And I would love it if we, at least at one point in history, we get to know how these television series and movies were made. Otherwise, it just is lost. And I know that from a marketing point of view, it's maybe not what Disney wants, but I feel that they're ultimately doing a disservice to movie historians. So anyway, that is all I have to say about books. And that's also what I had to say in this episode of The Break. On the verge of the new year, or at the beginning of the new year, looking back on 2023. I will continue a little bit more for my dear patrons, the people that have supported me throughout 2023 and continue to do that with their monthly donations. It's thanks to them that I can do this work and that I can continue to do this work. So as a thank you, I always record a slightly longer version of The Break that is available to them on their private Patreon podcast feed. If you're interested, just go to patreon.com/Father Roderick. Do that even if you don't have the means to support me financially or you don't want to, because you can join the Patreon community for free. And this year, I'm going to post a lot of articles about the stuff that I talk about here on The Break. So I write these short articles. Like today, I wrote an article about how Galadriel was inspired by the Virgin Mary. Tolkien himself says it, so I explain a little bit why and how. And I plan on writing a lot more of that stuff on the Patreon community. So patreon.com/Father Roderick. Have a wonderful start of the new year, and we'll talk soon. God bless. May the Force be with you. All right, so that was part 1. That's for the public feed. And then we're going to continue with, let's see, with this jingle and then that jingle and that jingle. Okay, here we go. You know this jingle, it means that we're going to take a look at my kitchen, and that kitchen has been used a lot. When I was in Rome, I of course enjoyed a lot of good Italian food. I tried to find the pasta califa that I talked about a couple of episodes ago, and I went to the restaurant, the only restaurant where they used to serve this, and I saw that it had disappeared from the menu again. They took it off the menu 2 years ago, and I told them, bring it back. This is the best pasta. I come here on pilgrimage. I tell hundreds of my listeners to go to La Vittoria every year to go and taste this, and now you take it off the menu. So I saw that they brought it back at the time, and now they took it off the menu again. What's going on here? Guys, this is the best pasta you can eat in Italy, and they don't serve it anymore. Anyway, so, but for an entire week, enjoyed a lot of good Italian food. But when I came back, I really had to cook. I miss cooking so much. That's when I realized how much I enjoy cooking. And so I did so much cooking over the holidays, and I had so much fun. Now, what I did also was right before New Year's Eve. So for Christmas and New Year's Eve, these stores here in the Netherlands are all closed. We don't have any stores open, maybe in the big cities, but in the village where I live, everything is closed for days. And so what they do is right before everything closes down for the holidays, they have this sale. They try to get rid of all the perishable stuff. And so I went to one of these supermarkets 1 hour before they would close, before the end of the year. And they had discounted so much stuff to only like 30% of the price, including like really quality food. Like I was able to pick up an entire package that allows me to make the, what's the word? The thing that Gordon Ramsay always makes the beef Wellington, the Beef Wellington. This is like a staple task that he always gives to his pupils on these television shows, because apparently Beef Wellington is kind of hard to pull off to do it well. So I never prepared it because it's so insanely expensive. I hardly ever eat beef just because it's too expensive. But for only 30% of the price, oh, sure, I did get that Beef Wellington, and it is now in my fridge, as well as some other stuff. So I had a lot of food that I would never be able to afford, and I picked it up for almost nothing. The problem is it's now all in my fridge, and I need to find probably like half a day to prepare everything, because, of course, they were selling this because they wouldn't be able to sell it after the holidays. So now it's the 1st of January. So the expiration date is coming close, and I need to prepare this in advance and then freeze it in or whatever. But so as long as it's prepared, you can keep it in the fridge for a week. I have enough food for at least 2 weeks. And this always gives me a bit of extra dopamine, like to be able to cook with ingredients that normally I would never consider buying, but then to be able to pick them up for dirt cheap, because otherwise they would be thrown away. It gives me such a kick. And I had, like, for New Year's Eve, I had mussels. I love mussels. Not everybody likes them, but I again, it was just like $3, or no, it was less than that. And it was like a full-sized bucket of mussels. So good. They were extraordinarily good. The quality of mussels apparently this year is way above average. And then way too much, of course, for one meal. So tonight, I made spaghetti, not al vongole, but I used the mussels, and I created a creamy sauce with heavy cream, and of course the mussels themselves. So I got them out of the shells, and I added some herbs and so the cream, and then of course a lot of that, like the moisture in which I cooked the mussels, also a bit of white wine, and then I mixed in some al dente spaghetti. Oh, it was so good. Oh, I mean, this really tasted better than a lot of the pasta that I've eaten in Rome. It was such an amazing result. So that's definitely going into books for me as a very, very nice recipe to make. So there is so much else that I want to cook. Last year, I really discovered the Korean cuisine. So I taught myself a number of Korean recipes. This year, I'll probably venture into even more exotic types of cooking. I always love to cook something new. So this will definitely be a staple ingredient of my shows in the future. Just tell you about what I'm cooking, and maybe it will inspire you. And if I have any questions, because sometimes I don't know how to make something, or I've heard of something, and so Discord is always a wonderful place to get some inspiration for my kitchen. All right, let's talk about what I learned on the internet, what I discovered on the internet. Where shall I begin? This last year, of course, was for me the year that I discovered that I very probably have ADHD, and I have TikTok to thank for that. The algorithm detected it before I knew it myself, and I recognized so much in the videos that I saw, thanks to the algorithm, that I started to read books and came to the conclusion that the only way in which I can understand my brain and how I work and why sometimes I get stuck, it's all very easy to explain if you consider the hypothesis that I have ADHD. So that was my biggest discovery last year. And in this next year, I am still following a number of coaches and psychologists, and I want to learn more about this particular trait that I have. It's, there are some downsides to it, also a lot of positive sides to it, and I want to work with it as much as I can. And the big result that I never expected is from when I started, using TikTok as a platform. But this has reconciled me with myself. I don't think I would have ever discovered that I had this if it hadn't been for TikTok and for this algorithm. So amazing. Some other interesting developments last year, of course, the whole emergence of AI and how quickly this is evolving. You can now download an app on your phone that is made by Microsoft, and it uses the same AI that they use in Bing, but it's a standalone. It's called, I think, Companion or something like that. But it can also generate pictures, images. So you can create AI art, and it's free. Of course, you can do almost anything nowadays, but most of the services require you to pay at one point, but not Microsoft. So I suppose we're going to see a lot of AI in the year to come. Also, of course, obviously, a lot of questions about this, and I definitely think that we should develop an international policy, especially since in the United States they're entering the election year, and you can imagine what disasters can happen if people don't realize that they're watching AI-generated content and take it for granted that this is real. Can you imagine just the amount of disinformation? This has already been a problem in previous years, but this year this could go in overdrive. And I think the Pope is going to write a letter about this for this year's Day of Communications. And I'm very glad that the Church is going to speak about this. Now, of course, Pope Francis is not himself a user of this technology, but he has a lot of people working for him who do their research. And I think the emphasis is going to be on the protection of the human dignity with this emergence of AI. Of course, it has a lot of upsides. I use it myself also. ChatGPT has been quite a good tool to help me come up with ideas or to structure my thoughts, but it cannot replace my own imagination or the longer you work with it, the more you see what is AI and what is not. And I've seen time and again that AI can generate a lot of false information. So when I was doing the research for my article about Galadriel and the Virgin Mary, at first I got good information, and then it started to mix it up, and it started to spew out like variations of that same information where I I knew it was completely wrong, was completely messed up. So imagine if this ends up on the internet, on Wikipedia or something like that, then people will take it for granted. So artificial intelligence is just as intelligent as the input it gets. And since the input comes from fallible human beings, we need to be careful with this kind of technology. Other technology that I'm looking forward to is, of course, coming from Apple this year. We are on the brink of getting to see the Apple Vision Pro headset, which is, of course, still extremely expensive and almost experimental. It won't come to Europe anytime soon, but I do believe this is going to be a watershed moment for this technology. Of course, Meta is doing a pretty good job with the Meta Quest, and I'm probably going to get a Meta Quest 3 because Apple needs to go through some iterations before I think that technology will be interesting for me. But I do believe that Apple, in the long run, will definitely have the best product when it comes to AR, VR. But in the meantime, what I like about the Meta Quest 3 is I've joined a community on Discord where a lot of the gamers there have the Quest 3 and they talk about their experiences. And apparently there's this app coming out, or this an application or a mod or something like that, which will enable people to play almost any game that has been created using the Unreal Engine, which is one of the most popular gaming engines. You can, with very few steps, you can turn almost any 3D game into real immersive VR. That would, of course, be a game changer, because then I would be able to step inside the games that I've been playing for years. Imagine being able to play a game like Red Dead Redemption in VR. The game itself is already like one of the most impressive games I've ever seen. It's so realistic. But then to actually sit on that horse and to look around, to move your head and to see that Western world around you, or a game like Cyberpunk, which is a bit like Blade Runner, or there's so many games that are built with this engine, and apparently it works really well. Now, that is the type of use that makes me ultimately decide to go for this technology, even though, of course, the Meta Quest, it's just another iteration, and this year there will probably be yet another version of the Meta Quest. These things will get better and better, and unfortunately, a lot of this technology gets outdated very quickly. I have 2 VR headsets here in my room that I never use because, well, one is not even supported anymore, and the other one is so slow. Yeah, so that's a downside. If I buy an iPhone or an iPad, I know that it will last me 5, 6, 7 years. I still use a MacBook Air, and it's 12 years old, and it still runs perfectly fine. Now, that is, of course, not the case with this emerging technology. So it creates a lot of e-waste. On the other hand, I love VR. I love where this technology is going. And when I was in Rome, I filmed a lot in 3D, specifically because I know that one day, hopefully in not too many years, I'll be able to play back that footage in 3D and be back in Rome. It's just amazing. I think it's going to be the times in which we live. For a geek like me, it's amazing. Speaking of video games, I did play a number of really cool games last year. Hogwarts Legacy for me was the best one, the most impressive one. But also, as I mentioned, Red Dead Redemption 2, as well as some really like indie games that don't look very good but play really well. And I am really looking forward to playing the best game of 2023, and that's Baldur's Gate 3. I have it on the Xbox, so it should run really well. The only thing that I haven't found yet is the time to sit down and play this game. But I will. And I know I'm going to love it because I love D&D. So all that is I think, making me look forward a lot to this new year. And I'm also looking forward to some of my plans that I expand upon in the newest episode of The Walk. So I talk a bit about the two audiences that I try to cater to and how I try to do that. And I'm especially excited about developing my coaching initiative, where I want to pass on what I have learned over these, 17 years that I've been active in social media. I want to help other people and parishes and communities to do the same. And so in order to do that, I'm going to reserve time, and I'm going to put some resources towards developing this coaching trajectory. So if you're interested in that, if you are individually interested in being coached by me, or if you know of a parish that you belong to, or a diocese that may benefit from my coaching, definitely let me know. And I'm excited. I really think I have something to add to the overall effort that the church puts in reaching out using these media. We'll talk soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless. And there we are. The show is done. Thank you so much for being in the chat room. You are fulfilling a function that is super useful to ADHDers. And that is, you're like a proxy person. So you don't do the work, you're just there. And that helps me to focus on the task at hand, and that's only something I understand now after doing these live streams forever. But only now I understand that for someone with ADHD, that is extremely useful to have these people, being there, even if it's just in a digital form, if it's just on the other side of the planet. But it helps me to stay focused. It helps me to get the work done. So thank you so much for doing that. And yes, Lobo, I agree. ADHD is a trait. It's not a disability. It's atypical in the sense that it's not as common as what, the way in which neurotypical brains work, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily a defect. It's just different. And I truly feel I've already experienced the more you work with it, instead of trying to do what I've done most of my life is to fight against it, the more you work with it, the more you start realizing that this is actually also an incredible quality and something that really helps me do what I do and to do it really well. It's just that some other stuff that may be so obvious and simple for other people costs me a lot of energy or is even something out of my reach. But so are a lot of other things, I will never be able to run a marathon under 2 hours, but who cares? Other people can. What's the reading routine to read many books? Dog wants to know. Well, audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks every single moment of the day. And of course, I'm a celibate priest, so I don't have a family. I can read whenever I want. So I usually read whenever I do something else. So it's always in combination with a mundane task like cleaning the house, doing the dishes, folding the laundry, stuff like that. Even simple video games. I play just games just to have something to do, to relax my mind. And in the meantime, I listen to these audiobooks. I listen to them at oftentimes at 2 or 3 times the speed. Well, 3 times, that's rare. It depends on the narrator. But I would say most books I read them at twice the speed, some books at 2.5 times, and some books at 1.5 times the speed. And that doesn't really change the experience. And some people say, well, that doesn't count. It's an audiobook. It's not really reading. And I'm thinking, what do you mean it's not really reading? Your mind is doing exactly the same. It takes words and it processes them. Whether I do that through my ears or through my eyes, it's exactly the place where it ends up is the same. In fact, audio for me as an ADHDer works better Is there something that helps me focus when I'm listening to a voice? I don't have to put effort into, moving pages and especially if I'm reading on a e-device, I often get distracted. And so I don't have that. When I have my headphones on, I'm in my own world. I am in the story. So for me, that's the trick. Some people don't like audiobooks. That's okay too. Everybody has his own reading method. But I know what I like about audiobooks is that you can see how much time it takes. So when I launched a book, I see, this book is 17 hours, like Mistborn, or Red Risings, 17 hours. That's a lot. You know what? I'm listening to this at twice the speed, and then all of a sudden it's only 8 hours or 8.5 hours. Hey, I can read that on a Saturday. Well, no, actually not, because half of the day is gone. But, an 8-hour book, I can process that in one day. Not every day, of course. Sometimes I have just too much work. But especially when, on kind of low intensity days, I can easily read 1 or 2 books per day. So that's how I read 150 books. Hey, Rebecca. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you too. Let's see what else. Oh, doubling. Yes, Lobo, you're totally right. That's called doubling. I forgot the term. I'm so new to all this. But, yeah. Let's see. Nate Doggs read 5 books this past year, and 3 of them were 700 plus pages. Well, you know what? It's not about the quantity. It's about, do you enjoy it? Does it bring something to you? For me, setting 150 books as a goal helped me to focus. I did that without realizing that would help me as an ADHDer. To have that, it gives me dopamine to read a book and then to see the list go smaller and smaller. It gives a tremendous amount of dopamine, which is what I need as an ADHDer. I agree, Chief. Star Trek Lower Decks, forgot to mention that. Amazing. The crossover episode made me want to see just that. I want to see a live action version of Lower Decks. It's so good. The actors are amazing. Marianne is sad today. I am so sorry to hear that. Knights of the Old Republic. Also have to play that. Never finished that game. What If season 2 was really good. I'm also going to watch it. Although sometimes with What If, I'm like a bit lost because there's so much you have to know about the MCU, and I'm just a casual fan of the MCU. So sometimes it was like, who was that again? Let's see. The story was way too long for what Netflix wanted, so I had to cut a lot. The director's cut may be a lot better. Oh, you're talking about Rebel Moon. Don't hold your breath. I mean, I would be so ashamed to release this version of the movie. And even if he adds a lot, it's not going to change the acting. It's not going to change the dialogue. It's not going to change the crappy special effects. So no, I think it's still really going to be super bad. Oh, no, it's just not. Oh, I tried to erase it from my mind, but I can't. Chief says, all my friends liked it? Really? You thought it was missing something. I would say it misses everything. Oh, it was so bad. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Hey, Anna, Happy New Year to you too in Poland. Alrighty. Well, you know what? I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you so much. It was fun talking and doing this live stream. Thank you so much again for doubling. I'm going to upload this podcast and then I'm going to sleep. So have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll talk soon.